think a lot of Dardoch as a person translates into him as a player. He's really explosive. He has a really alpha personality, you know, so that definitely shows in the game.
He's like a real alpha male kind of guy, like hits the gym. He's really confident, probably overconfident a bit. Everyone is kind of feeding his ego just because he had a good performance against me in week 1.
Last time I played him, I manhandled him the whole series.
Acadian puts the team on his back.
Look at that man, he's got bigger shoulders in and out of game.
He's the best jungler, besides me, of course, at actually fighting people.
A triple kill for Immortal Jungler. They're taking down the whole team.
He's just brute forcing and beating everybody with superior mechanics. I was in his position last year, like it's not gonna work against me. I'm just a 10 times smarter player than he is.
It doesn't look like Immortals has any idea what they're doing. We should have the upper hand.
I'm just going to beat him because I have the better team.
Welcome back to Week 5 of the North American League Championship Series. You're joining us live from our studios here in Los Angeles, California. And as you can see, the fans are out in force once again for a big day of games here in Week 5. We've got a break in the LCS next week, so we got to get our fill today. Echo Fox filing in earlier up against their opponents, Immortals and FlyQuest, making their way into the studio, looking to bounce back after a loss. TSM upsetting C9 yesterday. That was a big win for them, hoping to keep the momentum going. Hello, everyone. I'm James Dash Patterson. Bringing their expertise to the analyst desk today are Mark Zimmerman and Aiden Zyrene Moon. Gentlemen, how we doing today at the end of the weekend?
Pretty good. I think actually today has a lot of really good matchups, so I'm excited to see exactly what happens.
Yeah, and with, of course, C9 losing yesterday, no one in the league is undefeated anymore. Anything can happen. First order of business is to review the standings and look to see how the teams are stacked up. Despite suffering their first loss last night, Cloud9 remain on top, but only one match ahead of TSM in second. FlyQuest goes into the day in third, with Phoenix 1 in fourth, while our teams in the lower half of the standings hope to break from the pack today. We'll see if they can do so with our scheduled matches. First off, on NA LCS 1, FlyQuest and TSM go toe-to-toe in a battle for second, with Phoenix 1 versus Cloud9 later in the day. On NA LCS 2, Dardoch and Immortals duke it out against Acadian and Echo Fox. Then Team Liquid hope to best CLG for our second match in the Battle Theater. Make sure to tweet any questions you have to @LOL Esports, and myself, Jad, or Kobe might answer them on NALCS tonight after the show. First things first, though, I want to touch on the Giants at the top of the table. Cloud9 suffering a defeat at the hands of TSM just last night.
Yeah, and I think that Cloud9, they've actually had some vulnerabilities in their early game, and that's what we saw exploited. We actually saw this punished a little bit in their series against TL and their series against FlyQuest, all of which have gone 3 games. So Cloud9, they've actually been a little bit trending downwards, and I think a lot of that is the way that their jungle and their mid have been playing together when there is a bad jungle game. So I think Contracts and Wild Turtle as well are the two that have been struggling the most on this team.
Right, and I think one thing that was surprising was the way that TSM actually did win. We always talk about Bjergsen and Sven being really important, and they did have some good early games, but a lot of the wins did come off the back of the great team fighting that both Haunter and Bjergsen had, where they were kind of tag teaming a lot of stuff. They had the Maokai Orianna game and then the Shen Zed game, where they were always kind of piggybacking off each other.
Yeah, and you said it's a really interesting way that that game ended up going, because we were actually saying Cloud9 looked like they had the strongest solo lanes, and that Contracts and Wild Turtle were the ones that were, struggling a little bit sometimes sneaky sometimes for Cloud9.
Yep.
So that was a game where we actually saw the solo laners not perform up to the standard that we had actually seen the rest of the split.
Right, not on the side of Cloud9, but for TSM, proactive plays, strong play out of both solo laners, brought them the victory. Of course, an exciting win for TSM, but the work's not done for them this weekend. They have to go up against FlyQuest for that kind of second place positioning just today. So it's a big weekend for TSM.
Yeah, I mean, TSM, they ended up upsetting Cloud9. FlyQuest were actually upset themselves by Dignitas. I think FlyQuest, they're really cute in the draft phase, but I think they tried to get a little too cute there. They ended up drafting Jarvan 2 games in a row against Zed. Maybe they were considering it was a counter, but I think overall the compositions were still rather weak. And for TSM coming into this matchup against a team that drafts really differently, it's so hard to prepare for, because TSM last played last night, 7 p.m., Now they're playing at noon today, so they haven't had much turnaround when they're going up against FlyQuest.
And just to touch on kind of that FlyQuest upset a little bit more, a lot of the teams are slightly inconsistent in the league, and if you end up with a certain matchup against another lower-seeded team, I think it's pretty easy for teams to get upset because Dignitas plays this really reactive style. FlyQuest obviously getting a little cute in the draft, and they're very aggressive, so that's a great matchup for Dignitas. Another upset that kind of happened was Echo Fox
against Envy.
Against Envy, right? And we always talk about Echo Fox having a great early game. Envy has a fantastic early game as well. They're up 500 on average at 15, and this time Echo Fox couldn't get off the ground early. Lyra had a great matchup, and that kind of catapulted them over their upset win.
Yeah, like you said, anything could kind of happen because we're actually seeing these players that have had dominant performances, like Jensen, fall a little bit. Moon had his worst performance with FlyQuest. And then also Acadian yesterday had his worst performance of the split so far. So right now, those people we knew as being consistent, strong forces for their team have taken a little bit of a hit yesterday.
Yeah, Lyra had his number in that series. I want to look at Immortals and Echo Fox. As it was just mentioned, both those teams sustained losses. They're playing against each other today. That means one of these teams is coming out in an 0-2 week, not what they wanted midway through the season, kind of as they're making their run towards playoff positioning.
Right, especially because they were both 2-0 last week, so they're both trending upwards, saying like, oh yeah, we're turning it around, this is going to be great. Both suffer a loss in their first match of the week, and now one of them is destined to go 0-2, so one of them's going to have not the best weekend. But they have a break next week to kind of figure things out.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see which teams can continue their climb as we send it to our casters to kick off the games.
Thank you very much, Dash. Hello,
Thanks, Dash. Welcome to the Battle Theater.